If he can stretch his man out for the rear naked. This is looking bad for Florin now. And yes, immediately Torres, what a strong man.
Well, the fun part is we're all from the same team, not just the IMMAF, but Combat Dough. We all come from the same gym, the same neighborhood, same upbringing. But it's crazy to see that years later, after the World Championships, I go the second year, Chepa decides to go pro. He goes his own little way. Carlos loses to, I believe, who ended up being the champion in 2015. But that ended up building him mentally to get ready to be who he finally is now in the UFC. And then myself having a small stint in the UFC and now becoming the BRAVE Bantamweight champion. It's like, man, this is a long time coming, especially with IMMAF and BRAVE working together. And me headlining a lot of the IMMAF BRAVE events. It's like, this is one, an honor, but it's also just really, really cool to be like, I was in that stage seeing these guys come up to be where I'm at now. And now they're watching me do stuff where they want to be at one day. And it's like, man, it's crazy how fast time flies. It was very nerve-wracking because we had the national tournament. I won, go in the first match, and I ended up being the first guy for Team USA to compete. So I'm like, oh man, I'm really nervous. You're facing the national champs from other countries as well, and you just don't know their level. And so you go in there, you're like, man, it was just hard enough to get here. What's the competition like? And fortunately, everything went well. But I remember one rule. They go, hey, you get one accidental shot, whether it's a groin shot, eye poke, whatever the case may be, and that's it. One warning. You do it again, you're disqualified. And I think my very first strike in the first match, and I believe I fought Romania, I threw a groin strike. Like, I ended up throwing an inside leg kick. The guy moved. It just went up. And he's like, you get one warning. If not, you're out. I'm like, and then eventually, I believe 30 seconds later, I was able to choke him out and get that first finish. But then every single fight after that, it just showed what country, specialized in what different styles and how competitive they were in different aspects. And it was like, okay, this is what we have to do to beat them. And you don't know who you're fighting. I think it was the best thing you could ever have as an athlete, because usually you're watching fights and preparing for it for weeks or months. This, you don't know who you're fighting, but you know they're good. So you have to be literally prepared for everything. And every single fighter I fought the first and second year were stylistically very, very different. Every year they got better. For me, I just graduated college. I was ready to go pro. My coach was like, no, hey, become the first ever two-time world champ. This is going to take you places that, because no one's going to be able to achieve this. It's going to be you and Carlos and maybe some other guys from different countries. And when I went there, sadly, Carlos lost to the inevitable champion for that year. And for me, I just kept on going, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this, because I was very nervous that if I lose, that I'm going to want to do it again to prove a point. Or mentally, it's like I lose and I won the first year maybe by a fluke. Like, I was never meant to be a world champ. And the second year, the competition was a lot better, but I also was a lot better. So I was able to dominate the competition, win the second year, and become the first ever two-time world champ. But because of that, I was able to get signed to Cage MMA. I was able to get signed to Titan FC. There were so many big leaps and bounds because I became the first ever two-time world champ as an amateur. It was never done in history. And for me, it wasn't a goal of mine. I was just like, hey, I'm just listening to my coach and doing what I need to do. As long as he tells me to do it, yes, sir. For me, the biggest thing is my coach would tell us you need 20 amateur fights before you turn pro. And the IMMAF, you have 5 fights in 6 days. For me, I had 4 fights. And so it's 8 fights in 2 years, very, very fast. But you're fighting pro-level guys at the amateur ranks. I believe my first 2 fights, I ended up getting slightly injured, where it's like, I don't know if I can compete for the 3rd fight. But then you have to mentally push yourself. You have to take care of yourself properly. You have to make weight also every single day. So you have to keep yourself disciplined and accountable. So I think, at least for the IMMAF, in that aspect, you're doing everything a professional fighter would do, but as an amateur. And if you lost, that's technically the best thing you could have. It's like, hey, I lost to this guy as an amateur, even though I know I'll probably fight him one day as a pro. I'd rather lose him as an amateur and then be able to come back next year and do, so much better things. You look at fighters now, Mohamed Mokaev, you have Ramazan, who is the first ever 3-time world champion. It's like these guys have lost matches, come back, done their thing, and have just won and won and won, and now they're all professional and doing amazing. I don't know if I have like a highlight I mean, it was definitely always fun to go there and commentate and watch where I'm not getting beat up. And I get to, just commentate some of the awesome performances, especially years after me, and going, wow, these young athletes have gotten so much better than when I was around.